Today in Ohio, before President Obama and Mitt Romney's back-to-back speeches on the economy, the brains at the Romney campaign decided to make some noise. CBS News' Mark Knoller tweeted, Romney campaign bus emblazoned with Romney campaign logo is driving around President Obama's speech site, honking its horn. Mitt Romney spoke first in Cincinnati before a crowd of no more than 200 people. Working without a teleprompter meant Romney did not get into the specifics of his economic plan. Oh, and the other reason he didn't get into the specifics is that he knows he would lose Ohio in a landslide if he did. So he tried to put some spin on the president's speech.
He's going to be a person of eloquence as he describes his plans for making the economy better. But don't forget, he's been president for 3.5 years. And talk is cheap. Action speaks very loud.
And working without a teleprompter, Romney did veer into a new version of his big hit, I like being able to fire people.
In my experience in thinking about people who I want to have work for me, whether it's my doctor or the person that's going to be painting the house, I want to make sure they did a good job the first time. And if they didn't, I want someone who can do a better job.
Minutes after the Romney speech, 250 miles away in Cleveland, President Obama took the stage before a cheering crowd of 1,500 people at a community college. The president wanted Ohio to be ready for the bombardment of negative campaign ads that will fill that state.
The other side will spend over $1 billion on ads that tell you the economy is bad, that it's all my fault, that I can't fix it because I think government is always the answer, or because I didn't make a lot of money in the private sector and don't understand it, or because I'm in over my head, or because I think everything and everybody is doing just fine. That's what the scary voice in the ads will say. That may be their plan to win the election, but it's not a plan to create jobs. It's not a plan to grow the economy.
The president went into much detail, but summarized his plan for economic growth and economic fairness this way.
That's my vision for America. Education, energy, innovation, infrastructure, and a tax code focused on American job creation and balanced deficit reduction.
The president told Ohio voters it is now up to them to break the stalemate in Washington.
What's holding us back is a stalemate in Washington between two fundamentally different views of which direction America should take. And this election is your chance to break that stalemate. This November, you can provide a mandate for the change we need right now. You can move this nation forward, and you can remind the world once again why the United States of America is still the greatest nation on earth. Thank you.
Joining me now, MSNBC's Alex Wagner and Ari Melber. Now, in the rewrite tonight, I'm going to get into the very weirdest thing Romney said in the speech. But my favorite thing he said, my favorite substantive point he said, was something that will be, I'm sure, ignored by all of the political media until now. And that was, of course, the tax increase that he proposed. Let's listen to Romney proposing a tax increase on day one.
Well, on day one, I'll label China a currency manipulator, and that will allow me to apply tariffs where they steal our intellectual property and kill jobs.
Now, tariffs, of course, come under the jurisdiction of the tax committees because they are a sales tax paid by Americans on Chinese goods. Alex, it's not every day that you hear a Republican candidate for president saying on day one, I got a sales tax increase for you.
Yeah, it's not every day that you hear a Republican candidate trying to gin up enthusiasm at a pivotal point in his campaign by channeling sort of anger, economic frustration at China. This Romney day one, Lawrence, based on the ads that we've seen so far, is going to be the longest day in history. I'm not quite sure it's the kind of day that we measure on the current calendar, because apparently he's going to do everything that day. He's going to balance the deficit. He's going to repeal Obamacare. with something else. We don't know what. He's going to deal with our relationship with China. I mean, these are platitudes. I mean, you know, Mitt Romney has railed against the president's lack of substance on these issues. He has offered us nothing in the way of actual policy prescriptions, aside from putting his arm around Paul Ryan's budget plan. Now, I think the president was masterful today in really wrapping Mitt Romney and the extreme wing of the Republican Party together and saying, in effect, these guys are outliers. They are even divorced from traditional Republicans who have been great for the country through time. He channeled Nixon. He talked about Abe Lincoln. He talked about Ronald Reagan. And he positioned Mitt Romney as someone who is distinctly out of touch and has policies that will be incredibly detrimental to this country.
Well, Alex, let's listen to the president. I agree the president was really good and clear at outlining what is the Romney economic plan. Romney didn't bother to do that, really. Let's listen to how the president outlined that Romney economic plan.
They'll start by cutting nearly $1 trillion from the part of our budget that includes everything from education and job training to medical research and clean energy. It would also take away coverage from another 19 million Americans who rely on Medicaid. And they propose turning Medicare into a voucher program, which will shift more costs to seniors and eventually end the program as we know it. Tens of millions of middle-class families will end up paying higher taxes. Many of you would end up paying higher taxes to pay for this other tax cut.
And, Ari, the truth of it is the president was being way too fair there because he wasn't factoring in that the Republicans at the same time are promising to close the budget deficit, also cut taxes. If you're to do that, you're basically going to be closing down the federal government.
I think that's about right, and that's the whole problem here. There's this language about the president being in over his head, but as Alex Wagner was just saying, so many of these plans are not detailed. All we know is that there would be these drastic cuts to the bone. There was the big Fed study out last week that showed that people in the bottom fifth saw their savings, their net worth go from about $1,500 down to zero over the past 3 years. So if you had a little something put aside and you're down to zero, you're really worried. You're in a lot of trouble. And Medicare, which gives people at the lowest bracket some kind of basic medical insurance and safety net, you know, cutting that basically takes people and puts them one medical emergency away from bankruptcy or homelessness. And I don't mean to sound so, you know, dramatic about this, but this is very real, as anyone watching knows, in this economy. And that's what they're talking about doing, is not targeting the middle or the upper middle. These are not sort of questions about trade-offs. This is literally taking programs that are there for the neediest and trying to go right at them and basically a huge risk to people who need the most help right now.
Alex, it was a long speech, 54 minutes. I think those of us who have to watch it to review it and the people who are in the hall are the only people who saw the whole thing. But I think the president knows that. He was leaving a bunch of sound bites for Ohio media to use, for us to use. He doesn't expect anyone to get through the whole thing. One of the passages that struck me a lot was he did something that indicates a kind of confidence in a campaign. He got to a point where he's saying, if you agree with that, vote for the other guy. He got into a rhythm of go ahead and vote for him if you agree with that, and if you agree with that, and if you agree with that. And then he did a little chuckling challenge to the press saying, I look forward to the media checking out the facts of how President Obama, have described the Romney plan. There was real confidence in that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Lawrence. That really stood out. And also, I mean, as part of that, this sort of shift in narrative, because the president has been making a lot of I statements, we statements. This was the first speech I saw where he said, you, American voter, you have a chance to break the stalemate. The power is in your hands. The other thing that does is it gets people to buy into this election. I mean, there's a lot of talk about disenfranchisement, sense of lack of enthusiasm. And here was the president clearly laying out two incredibly different paths for the country and saying, you, American voter, this is your country. This is your America. If you want one thing, go for the Republicans. If you want the country that I am proposing, vote in November. This is the future, and you are part of it, and you have a chance to make a difference.
Alex Wagner and Ari Melber, thank you both very much for joining me tonight. And I'm telling you guys, do not leave your seats, because coming up in the rewrite, the weirdest thing Romney said today in the speech. You don't want to miss it. Stay right there. We're going to go into also why Ohio is so important this year and every year. Joe Klein is in Ohio tonight, along with Ohio State Senator Nina Turner. And later, Rush Limbaugh tries to tell nuns what to do. That is not going to work out so well for Rush. Sister Simone, one of the nuns on a bus, will join me, and Rush Limbaugh is so lucky, just so lucky he's not here. But Lisa Ling is here, and she's done a close-up look at the work American nuns are doing. That's coming up.